No, we didn't know, but tell everybody now again.
What the fuck?
Oh. Yeah.
Tell that secret you just told us that you did. Everybody in here knows now, but not in the live feed yet, or the live feed.
Well, because we like to call us dumpster fire show non sequitur, we decided it would be kind of funny to invite a bunch of people to an after show following a theistic and atheistic worldviews, and actually play Flat Earth Jeopardy that Steve put together last week. So, surprise everybody! We're actually not going to be speaking about the debate.
First, I want to ask. First, I want to ask people.
All right, everybody's leaving. Goodbye.
How is no? We already played the Flat Earth Jeopardy. And by the way, who won that? That was Landon. How did we get 3 downvotes before it even went live? I know all you motherfuckers. There's 25 people watching. I will find those 3, and I'm sure that one was Ocean. There's no question about it.
No. I got a thumb up on you, actually.
You thought, ooh, that sounds nasty. Remember, I'm the straight one here. Anyways, I'm just going to kind of turn this right over to you because I know that there's a couple people that want to talk to Robert here for whatever reason, and then I'll kind of like interject. But Robert, you had not been abruptly cut off, but unfortunately we couldn't continue because of vMix errors. So I didn't want to like completely shut you down, but you had something to say, so you can't say, "Oh, well, Steve didn't want to hear the truth and he was cutting me off," because I get that from flat earthers a lot.
No, that wasn't my conclusion at all.
That's what you sent me, Rob. Like I have this paragraph.
Well, I did say
Steve's shutting down the truth.
I want to pass this through you and Dr. Bowen, just to highlight something, to give you an example. Let me just bring it up. So if we were all living, say, 500 years ago, or 1600 years ago, say 400 AD, which would be Saint Basil. 500 years ago would be around John Calvin's time. Let me screen share.
While you're doing that, can I ask why you tend to? And I don't mean this disrespectfully. I really don't. You know, I love you.
No,
You're like one of my bestest buddies. But you do use a lot of appeal to authority, a lot of names, as if there's some kind of value to your argument just by citing a particular name. Now, granted, you have given some names, and I've looked into some things, and yes, sometimes I think you're right. But I don't know how much they really affect your overall argument just by citing some prolific in history.
No, that's a fair I guess assessment review, but it may come across like that, Steve. But trust me, I'm not doing that at all, because I think you and I can also use that line of reasoning or argument against that line of reasoning or argument. So, for example, we can quote people who misuse say evolutionary science to make our point, kind of like, for example, with Russell Humphreys. We're not saying the helium diffusion rates, the model of helium diffusion rates that Henke is providing is true because Russell Humphreys' model is wrong. No, we're showing you here's Russell Humphreys' argument as a particular argument about it, and the model that Henke is proposing still holds up because Humphreys' model doesn't hold up. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at these ancient people and showing you this progress of thought that ultimately should be put to the test through scientific verification that we do today. So I'm not at all relying on their opinion. All I'm saying is it interesting that they said this, but let's see if it's ultimately true or not. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
What I've seen, as far as like Rob will pull out a bunch of sources as well when there's a question about what early Christians believed. And at that point, he's using appeal to authority appropriately, I think, in this case.
Yeah, that's a much more succinct way of
and granted, look at I'm trying to explain to people many times they don't get it. Appeal to authority is not always a fallacy. Look at appeal to authority there are legitimate forms of appeal to authority. I know a lot of places out there they say, oh, appeal to authority is always fallacious. That's only for a fallacious form of appeal to authority. So, and by the way, there was a phone quake that they had. People on phones somehow in Google Hangouts.
I'm sad that Skylar Fiction left.
He was on iPad, I think. Same problem.
Yeah, I gotcha.
No, I get that. So I mean, I don't mind people quoting all the time, but certain people do it exceptionally amounts. I don't often quote people unless it's really relative to my argument.
Ultimately, that the irony is that's the basis of, say, when you write a PhD, you sustain peer review context when you progress knowledge in that context. And
well, I mean, no, because a PhD,
it's not appeal to authority either.
Well, hang on. Let's ask Dr. DeBowen here, because correct me if I'm wrong. I've never wrote a PhD thesis, but I've tried reading a few. You're actually adding to the body of knowledge. You're not. If I had my whole PhD thesis was just, hey, person X said this, person Y said this, person Z, I'm not adding anything to the body of knowledge.
Exactly. That's my point. You're adding to the data that precedes you on top of that, and you may be critiquing someone in the past when you refer to that person, even though that person may have had a legitimate claim.
All right. So what do you got on here? And by the way, before we get back to this, might as well.
Question, Rob.
Did he answer it?
Did you want me to answer it or?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest point when it comes to secondary literature and previous scholarship is there's a section, and it's usually a chapter, where you go through and you document what everybody has said in the past about your particular topic. And then the rest of the dissertation is you saying, this is what I add to or critique about or whatever. And I'd say it's extraordinarily frequent that, particularly in my field, things that are said 60 years ago, 50 years ago, or 20 years ago are outdated. And it's just the way this stuff works. So,
Dr. Bodie, you might want to fix your mic a little bit. It's hissy and it's way low volume.
Oh, is that better?
No.
Yeah, no.
Megan, technical expertise required over here.
Can I go on my frustration that I was yelling to Robert a little while ago?
Okay.
Sure.
The thing that I talked to Kenny about this as well, that I was specifically frustrated with was the verse that was discussed in Hebrews had mentioned evidence in it. And what I saw was both Rob and Kenny agree that, yeah, evidence is an integral part of faith, whereas the panel on the other side started disagreeing with that. At which point, if you have both of the Christians that were talking on one side saying, hey, this is what we mean by faith, and everybody on the other side saying, no, it's not, that is a recipe for the conversation getting into a straw man. Like, how is that not a straw man at that point?
That was to Robert, right?
That's to the room. If like that, I think that there should have been more time spent on what people mean by faith, because I felt like the Christians in the Hebrews conversation, when because Skylar brought up the verse, it was pointed out that evidence is referenced in the verse. The Christians both agreed that, hey, evidence is an integral part of faith, and then the atheist side disagreed, despite bringing up the verse in the first place. At which point, it became clear to me, as far as a conversation about faith, the part of the show that was talking about faith itself was the atheist side seeming to try to redefine the position from what the interpretation of the verse for two Christians on a verse that they brought up. It was confusing as hell to me. I didn't understand why that was happening. Like, it seemed like recipe for a straw man.
Well, I'll let one of them kind of take that one. I mean, again, I don't want to speak for the theists. I mean, granted, I don't see how you can say that it's not faith-based in some way. Of course it's faith-based. But like Jimmy's argument was...
By faith, they mean that there's an evidence aspect of it, though.
Well, that's
like, how... We can refer to Kenny and Rob. My interpretation of that conversation was that Kenny and Rob both said that evidence is a huge part of faith. Am I right, guys?
They said that, yeah.
Okay. And then there was disagreement on that aspect of faith from the people that were denying
I don't
that
think they're
faith
wrong
was
to say
useful.
that. I think the problem is when people hear the word evidence, they think only empiricism.
Yes, I agree with that. That it's clear that I think that Kenny even clarified that it's not talking about empiricism, but that it's talking about the different kinds of evidence.
Right, and this is what I got
But
on.
that was ignored by the other side.
But that's why I was asking Jamie, and I want a clarification because look at, I think there's a category area when people just sit there and I had the same problem with people on Twitter with Dr. Seigart. They were just going after him, and me and another guy, Knots, would protecting Sai because what they were doing was they were falsely accusing him of positing a deity for scientific explanations. And we know Dr. Seigart, he's extremely scientific, but I mean, he has religious beliefs, but he doesn't let his religious beliefs interfere with his scientific beliefs. And matter of fact, even Kenny said, look at, if I find something that isn't what I've read from the scriptures, then I might have to reevaluate what I've read from the scriptures. He takes the approach, you have a book of nature and you have the book of scriptures, and the book of nature guides how you read the book of scriptures. That's it. That's his framework.
I think that in the conversation,
that's framework as well.
Yeah,
Skylar
because-
and Mr. Atheist
yeah.
were the ones that were like directly guilty of the equivocation. I don't recall specifically if Dr. Bowen was agreeing with them on that, but it seemed to be a nodding head. I'm not, but he's here. He can correct me. But I'm sad that Skylar Fiction left and that Mr. Atheist isn't here, because I think that this is an issue that I had with the conversation that kind of applies directly to them too, specifically. Skylar for bringing up the verse and then equivocating the interpretation, and then Mr. Atheist equivocating on the word evidence, when specifically it was said on the other side, we're not talking about empirical evidence.
Yeah, no, I caught that as well, and I agree with you on that. That's why I've said many times, when people use that word evidence, people need to stop having that mindset of, because evidence
directly to science.
Evidence in science means something very specific. It literally means what changes the likelihood of a hypothesis being true or not, basically. That's what evidence means. But that's an empiricism type of evidence. When a theist is positing a deity, when they say evidence, they're not saying it's something that could be evidentially verified through empiricism. And I think that's a mistake when people force a theist to make a claim that they're not making.
Right. That was my annoyance.
I don't
you guys
think
can pick it up from there.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think an early Christian would argue, "Oh, I don't know this phenomena, therefore God did it," sort of thing, and
That's a God of the gaps.
and somehow they use that as an evidence approach. I'm pretty
right.
sure that
Rob is saying it's not a first century thing.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm saying that I'm agreeing with you that you're saying that God of the gaps is not
right. You can't.
Yeah,
do
but
that.
first century Christianity.
It's
not something they would do.
But Steve, are you, and well, maybe you, but from what I can tell from Mr. Atheist, for example, when he brings up Islam, we know, like you and I know, that when Muslims put their quote-unquote faith in the Quran, when, well, me personally, but maybe you guys as well, when we investigate the Quran, we see it found wanting, and therefore we can look at their faith as unjustifiable. So therefore, their faith, and I've had many interactions with Muslims, and ultimately they all argue that ultimately it's a subjective. They don't have a rational reason as to why they accept it. It's just part of their tradition, part of their culture, and if you disagree with it, then your life's at stake sometimes. So you can't then say that type of faith is the Christian faith, or the model of faith that the Christians were arguing for. That's where I'm coming from, at least. I don't know if
I don't know. Someone else want to jump on that real quick? No one? Well, that's kind of surprising.
I mean, for example, the individual that came in, Brock, he contacted me recently. He's been viewing your channel and non-sec as well, and he would argue the same thing, even though I don't really know him. But we got in touch briefly the other day, and he's a good guy.
Yeah, I don't know where he is. Well, we could talk about a few other things then. What we got you all here? You mentioned the helium diffusion rates. Well, Dr. Humphreys had actually emailed, as you know, he emailed us his copy of what he's going to submit to the Journal of Creation in regards to the videos that we did and Dr. Hankey and Dr. Lachey's work. Dr. Lachey is going to preempt him and send something to the Journal of Creation, already pretty much addressing all the things that Dr. Hankey's is going to bring up.
Yeah, Humphreys was ridiculous in that response. He you know, the conversion factor that the Russian scientists, the differential equation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It conveniently Humphreys ignores the correction factor.
Well, there's a couple of different things he does that's weird. One, again, I mean, clearly he took an exponentiation and somehow took that natural log that should be there and made it into a 10^8 log. Don't get that at all. And also, I think he gave higher weight to the low temperature data compared to the high temperature data, because the high temperature data has a much greater impact.
Yeah.
And he just skews his results, right? Basically he's cherry picking like a mofo.
Right.
But anyways, I've read both their stuff, and just to let you know, they will be published, and both of them mention my name. So Dr. Humphreys actually mentions my name in kind of passing, how I facilitated this, but Dr. Dr. Lachey actually acknowledged me as far as the work that I've done to try to facilitate discussion on this particular topic of helium diffusion rates, because it's not a topic a lot of people talk about, because it's not an easy topic. It's probably the most complicated topic that creationists have. But this is the first time.
It's long in the making. Yeah.
Like I said, this is the first time that they've ever had a very concise, over two videos, right? 2 long periods of time, but very concise place where anybody can go and watch and go, okay, now I at least have a basic understanding of this argument and learn how to defend against it. Because most people, when they go into young earth creationists, sure, they know a lot of the more basic young earth creationist models aren't true. I mean, they basically know, look, there was no flood. Okay, we can all disprove that. But when a young earth creationist says, oh, the helium diffusion rates indicate a young earth, there's not a single freaking person that's going to be able to actually argue against that unless you actually know the argument, which is very few, right?
You know, Steve, that hangout alone can be used, can be transformed into a technical, like book.
It was brilliant.
Where you would be the editor, and there you have the two persons responding to that. Like, literally, I'm not kidding. That is the only source out there that even.
It is. I know. I've contacted Talk Origins, and Dr. Hankey was going to contact Talk Origin and update to get those videos on there.
Yeah, Steve, you do just a great job. You and Kyle have a great thing going on now. And I think you guys are seeing it by the response, by the subs you're getting, by the downloads you're getting. Yeah, I think you guys are doing a good service for truth. And I think that's why I like you guys so much, because I love the truth. And I assume that everybody else loves the truth too, and we want the truth to be told, whatever it is.
The truth is boring, Kenny.
Yeah, well,
the truth is boring.
Unless you're a really hot prostitute.
There's no drama when truth is involved.
If you're a really hot prostitute, I want you to lie to me like you've never lied to anybody in your life. Okay?
Creepy.
Yeah.
Creepy.
So I don't pay you to tell me the truth, woman. No, I'm just kidding. I've never had to actually pay for sex, at least not directly. Secondarily, I only pay for it all the time.
Oh, I thought you were bisexual, Steve. I thought you had to pay for sex.
It's like I said, not up front. You know, you always pay later on, one way or another.
All right, can I ask Josh? Like, is Josh there? Is his mic fixed?
No.
Dr. Bone?
No.
You're even quieter.
How did they turn down his mic?
You guys can hear me, yeah?
Yes.
That's better.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Did you want to add something? Or is there doing a mic check?
No, it's just a mic check. Just mic check. Like 1, 2 testing.
Somebody had asked me, because I guess we're going a little bit off the discussion points.
The rails.
Yeah, somebody had asked me if I contacted or said I contacted Rationality Rules. Actually, yeah, kind of, sort of. We've been talking for a little while. I happen to agree with Rationality Rules 100% on most things, except for like one minor thing. And it's just a nuanced thing. But I think he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever seen on philosophy from somebody who's really had very limited formal training. He really is fucking amazing. And he's going to do a video in a couple weeks responding to Cosmic Skeptics video. And the point that I made to Rationality Rules, he agreed wholeheartedly. He said I was spot on in my assessment. But what we're going to do tomorrow, I think it's going to be tomorrow. A lot of people wanted to have a hangout on Cosmic Skeptics video, and so I'm going to try to arrange that tomorrow. It's just the problem I'm having is that so many people have different time periods that it's really difficult to get them all in during one particular time, right?
And he's coming on the show too.
Yeah,
do you want me in there on that, Steve?
Yeah,
Cosmic Skeptic will be coming on our show to discuss that very thing as well.
Yeah, I just got to find somebody for him. I'm going to find out from Alex Malpass tomorrow because we need somebody who really knows the topic for them to have a discussion.
Yeah, I think Malpass would be a good person to have the back and forth with him. Because
Yes.
I think the person that goes against him needs to just be able to be like, okay, objective morality is possible. That's the only thing that he's got to defend. Somebody that knows the topic should be an easy.
Yeah, well, I know Richard
Easy
Carrier
position
would.
to
I know
defend.
Alex Malpass would. I know Ozzy would. I mean, Ozzy has his own arguments for the assertion that objective morality exists, but
Right.
I don't remember his actual argument.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
But it's definitely possible. It's just, there's arguments as to why
That's an easier okay. Look I see what you're saying. The argue the case that objective morality is possible is a hell of a lot easier. So that's a given.
It's saying that it is the case, right?
Rather than it is the case. But see, Alex had made the argument that it's not possible, and even with the God, it's not possible.
Right.
And that's where I think that he jumps the shark many places. I mean, I have already given my assessment to Rationality Rules, and I do think very strongly, I'll go on record saying this because this is the one thing that Rationality Rules does majorly agree with, that I think that Cosmic Skeptic just did a form of subjective reductionism. He took everything down to subjectivism, and anybody can do that. That doesn't really get you anywhere. I mean, if you want to support that, then he has to deny physical objectivism too, that there's no such thing as objective physical laws, and there are.
I've yet to see that actually.
Yeah, but that's a problem when you go down that subjective reductionism route, is that everything eventually will boil down to a subjective approach. Okay, great. So the laws of physics are subjective? Because then
was that his ultimate argument?
That's what it boiled down to. That's the reading that I got watching this video. And when I ran that by Rationality Rules, he's like, that's dead on. And that's, I think, what he's going to make a video on, trying to elucidate at that point a little bit more.
Wait, that's so he agrees?
Rationality Rules agrees with me. Yeah, he totally agrees with me.
No. He agrees with Cosmic Skeptic?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, he is woefully against him. He thinks, and a lot of people that I've talked to thinks Cosmic jumped the shark big time. He
jumped like 5 sharks.
Yeah.
There was a lot of,
I know.
there were sharks jumping over him.
Steve, Dr. Bowen said that his mic is working now.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
better,
can you hear me now?
yes.
Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Here's I'll show you 2 things. So I'll
Are we
first
back on this
screen.
now? Okay.
Sorry?
Are we back on this now?
Yeah.
Go ahead, because Johnson's mic
Just
is
briefly with Dr.
go
Bowen, yeah. So here's Saint Basil in yellow, and you'll have a footnote number 3 here, and so this is Philip Schaff's translation of the Nicene Fathers, and Basil is quoting Genesis 1 verse 20, specifically from the Septuagint. So let the waters bring forth abundantly moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. So the waters are bringing forth the creatures that move, and ultimately the birds. And I understand
They're not,
if
though.
I'm mistaken.
Rob, their analysis of the Hebrew is incorrect. If they're even analyzing the Hebrew.
Does the Septuagint say that?
Huh?
Does the Septuagint say that?
I don't know, but it's not relevant. I'm looking at the Hebrew.
All right. So two things. You have Basil arguing about a common derivation between birds and fish based on his reading. I'm going based on their reading.
Okay,
And
but
so
I mean, a 4th century reading of the Hebrew text is very different than a 21st century.
I think he's using the Septuagint. And so hear me out. It's not just Basil. I can show you.
Sorry, Rob. I've heard this argument from you. Actually, I'm preparing a video response to it. I mean,
so how would you answer against, for example, you have this French theologian as well that Philip Schaff refers to. If you can read French, that's the quote that even the French art, like he's writing the 1600s, making the same argument that birds and fish are related.
I mean,
so here,
I don't know. I mean, I'm not an evolutionist as far as being able to articulate evolutionary theory, but I mean, I could just tell you what the Hebrew says. That's what I do. So, analysis of the text, in addition to looking at other passages that, describe similarities, it's just untenable.
What about John Calvin's commentary and Martin Luther's commentary? They all say the same thing.
I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, you can appeal to them, but looking at the Hebrew text, I mean, I guess Rob, every time I hear you cite some of these things, and I love you, man, I really do, but I just want to say, man, stop reading everybody else and go learn Hebrew. Just go learn.
Well, can I ask though? Can you explain why though? Like if you know the Hebrew, can you kind of expound on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how much detail you want to go into, but the waters are teeming forth the things. Then the birds themselves are flying in the air. So the idea that there's some common derivation of the two simply isn't there in the text.
Well, right? I'm curious though, because in that text though, does it not say that both the fish and the birds derive from the water?
No.
What? Okay, so how is it making the connection then? Like, how is it that early century Jews read it that way, but somehow it's different?
Yeah, like for example, this second Enoch text in the 1st century reads like this: "And on the 5th day I commanded the sea to engender fishes and feathered birds." This is a 1st century Enochian text in the Second Temple period.
Yeah, I'm curious. How are you getting it like one way, and then other people were getting it differently?
Well, this is just how things go, man. I mean, people interpret this stuff.
But how are you? Well, no, just with all due respect, I'm just asking, like, as from a student to a teacher perspective, like, how are you getting your conclusion based off of what? Like, can you show me?
I'm reading the Hebrew text.
Yeah, so can you show me? Like, is there a way like you can explain it to me so I can understand? That way I understand. No, I don't. But is there a way?
It'd probably be difficult.
Okay, that's fair. Because I was just hoping
this is one of those times where you're just going to have to defer to somebody that actually studies this, right? I mean, I don't speak Hebrew. I would have no idea if Dr. Bowen's analysis was right or wrong. I would have no metric to gauge that by, right?
But Steve, do you see in front of your face right now what I've highlighted? That this is a 1st century text.
No. Wait, I see a translation. He's talking about the actual Hebrew.
But these are people in the 1st century taking the Vulgata or the Septuagint or the Dead Sea Scroll
but read
text.
verse 22. I mean, just read verse 22.
What, from Genesis 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, it mentions birds.
Read the first. I mean, I can read it to you if you want, but.
So verse 22 says, God blessed them by saying, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the oceans, let the birds multiply throughout the earth." Yeah, how does 22 contradict 20?
I mean, it's the point of the passage, right? And if you continue on down, verse 26, dominion of fish over the sea, birds of the heavens, beasts of the earth. I mean, even in 2:19, it doesn't even mention the sea. I mean, I think making a connection that because somehow the sea is teeming with these teeming things, and that the birds that are flying in the air, to say that they have common derivation from the water,
That's a stretch.
Yeah. So here's the Talmud. I got the Talmudic commentary on that, on the Hebrew text with respect to that, 2:19, and they say, observe in proof of the last fact that fowls have scales on their legs similar to those of fish. So they're making that fish connection. And then the question was asked among others. In one place it is said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life and fowl that flies, etc. And another it says, and out of the ground the Lord formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air. How can these passages be reconciled? It was replied, they were created out of marshy ground. So here you have the Talmudic Jews using the Hebrew text saying, these two texts seem to contradict because one's saying out of the ground, the other's saying out of the oceans. So how would you respond to a Talmudic commentary in that? So are they wrong as well?
I mean, I don't know what to tell you, Rob. I just
I'm not. By the way, I'm not saying that you're incompetent, Josh. I'm saying this is what I read. This is what scholars are saying. And
some very old scholars.
Right. Why are they making these claims if now they're totally wrong on that point when for 2,000 years the Genesis commentaries say the exact same thing? Keel and Delitzsch, for example, make the same argument. I can bring their commentary up.
I mean, you continuing to ask me is not really going to get us anywhere. I don't know why they say it.
So then they must be incompetent in the Hebrew then.
I didn't say they were incompetent. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous conclusion.
But why do they? Why do they make the argument?
Wait a second. To say that Sumerologists 100 years ago that said things about Dumuzi were incompetent people because we would say no, they were wrong. That's ridiculous.
Could they just have an interpretation based upon the information given at the time?
Absolutely.
Well, that seems okay to me.
That has nothing to do with
confidence. You're saying it's not derived from the text. You're reading the text differently. All right, then all 99% of these other people are somehow reading something totally different and not the Hebrew text you're reading.
And that's actually what I was trying to figure out is how are you getting something different? That's actually Robert actually kind of
maybe he has a better understanding of Hebrew than they did. I don't know.
Well, that's
probably not my. I mean, that seems to say that I have some sort of competence that they didn't have.
Okay, how about this? You have a different way of interpreting it. I don't see a problem with that.
But then, well, that doesn't really answer the question, though. That's kind of just
going.
He
can't ask her why. He can't answer why somebody. How long ago was this? What century?
Well, the Talmud goes back to, you're talking in that Second Temple period.
No, but Rav Samuel, when does he write this?
11th century AD, like rabbinic literature.
But when did Rav Samuel write this?
Samuel.
Well, who's the person you're actually citing as the person that did the original translation for this?
Oh, this is a rabbi in the rabbinic period. So there's a variation between the 1st century up till the 10th century AD. So the Masoretic text, for example, the Masoretes, like that period, 900s AD, around there.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, go ahead. Continue. I'm Rob.
I mean, here's Calvin. Calvin says, it seems, however, but little consonant with reason that he declares birds to have proceeded from the waters, and therefore this is seized upon by captious men, which would be the atheists of his day, as an occasion of calumny. But although and he goes on to argue that the time will come when God's wisdom in this will be justified. And sure enough, modern evolutionary theory comes on the scene. Birds do derive from the Cambrian context. Birds are dinosaurs that came ultimately from marine life.
Yeah, I see. This is where I'm like, no, I there's no possible way you can convince me, even with reading, that some tertiary comment that has really, you can never do. My way of looking at this: could you have developed evolutionary theory by these passages? No, absolutely
no
not.
way. No
absolutely
way.
not. So
they asked the question.
Let me finish. This is again post hoc analysis to me.
No, it's not. They
How
asked
is it not?
the question. They asked the question. Their common derivation from the waters has made them of one family. That's Basil in the 4th century. They asked the
And
question.
it means family. Okay, first of all, do we know? You have to like take
Common
the word
descent,
family.
common derivation.
Does the word family here literally mean a taxonomic level? No, because
Yeah,
Linnaeus even has a taxonomic levels yet.
I know. But he's thinking that fish and birds have a common descent. That's not
that
wrong.
might be true.
From
That
an
might be
evolutionary
true.
context.
That might very well be true. And look,
Exactly.
But the Greeks also knew that there's probably some particles known as they called atoms. They didn't know what the hell they were. So just because they had, look, all life is related, and all of us have water, there might have been some kind of thing where they said, hey, there might be some reason for this. But no theory could have ever came from this, and it wasn't divine intervention. There's just people.
What is Basil reading for him to say that?
But you're missing the point. These are just common observations. Anybody could have made during the time.
No. He's reading something, which is the scriptures.
Steve.
He's reading his own scriptures and making a commentary on it.
But the scriptures are.
We now know what the electric obelisk was for, Steve.
For reading scriptures.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're not seeing my point here. The scriptures don't tell much about anything. They have very vague sentences, and that I think a lot of people can make.
I think this is pretty clear, Steve.
I don't think it is at all.
Says common derivation. I think that's pretty clear.
Well, yeah, no, sure. I mean,
ultimately the point is that the concept of the idea is being taught there. That's where they're getting this idea from, and it literally matches up to what we are saying now today in 21st century.
What do other translations say? How do they word it?
So interestingly, the King James translation actually reads just like the Septuagint, but I will agree that the Masoretic text does not read like this. That's the only difference.
How come the Bible doesn't say all life started billions of years ago and came from a population of a species? It doesn't have anything of value in that regard to it. In fact, the Bible's so vague. There's people that think that the Earth is 7,000 years old by reading the scripture.
Steve, if you think about it, look, this is Brenton's translation of the Septuagint. Let the waters bring forth reptiles having life and winged creatures flying above the earth in the firmament of heaven, and it was so.
Yeah, the firmament of heaven, what they thought was water too, right?
Well, yeah, and the Septuagint took rakia.
Could he be embellishing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that science was wrong. The Bible got that incorrect.
No. The problem here is the Hebrew would say rakia, which just means expanse, so birds flying in the expanse. But either way, the point is that the Cambrian explosion 500 million years ago is indeed the waters proliferating all this life that then eventually lead into mammals, birds, and so on, that then ultimately lead to humans.
That correlation there,
that's a stretch.
How would you ever?
Hold on. I'm curious though. How is it a stretch though when it's literally the concept is being taught with these commentators?
Because it's a disjointed correlation.
And it's one translation.
Okay, hang on. So what I will say, if you are going by the Septuagint reading, there's a participial form that you could read the way that it sounds like you're reading, right? So it says, so lead them out from the water, and the flying, them flying is in this participial form. So fine. The Hebrew though is pretty clear. So what it says in the Hebrew is, and God said, and there's a jussive form, let the waters teem. Right? One jussive. Let the waters teem with these teeming living creatures. And let the birds, another jussive, let the birds fly over the earth and upon the face of the rakia in the heavens. So two distinct things. Rob, I really wish, you've put in so much, obviously so much time. Just go learn Greek and Hebrew, man. Just take the time to go do it.
Do you think if he did, do you think he would have a different perspective than what he has now?
Yes.
Okay.
No, Josh, I didn't disagree with you about the Hebrew. I just then I did say the Masoretic text reads like what you just said.
No, and I guess that's what I'm saying is I'm seeing what you're saying because if you look at the Septuagint, because I just did. That reading makes some more sense.
Do you disagree with this editor? So the editor of Calvin's commentary, he actually gives a footnote with respect to verse 20. So he in fact, he quotes from the Vulgate, the Latin, "Let the waters cause to creep forth the reptile," and on and on. And it's just a generic thing. There's no mention of bird here. And why would you disagree with the Septuagint's reading?
Oh, I don't think it's a disagreement. I think that one allows for a reading where the other does not. It doesn't mean that that should be the reading. And yes, I would disagree with Shattert's there as simply meaning a reptile.
So would you say this is speaking about, like,
in the water,
proliferation of organisms? It doesn't have to be reptile.
Right. They're just water creatures that swarm.
Right. But again, what water creatures do swarm? That's a reptile would fit that category.
Well, it could. I think you were saying that's one interpretation.
Yeah.
Sorry, I guess my point is that, yeah, I don't know where you're going with that one, but I suppose what I would say is that from the Hebrew text, which is what I assume that you're going with, the two jussive forms don't seem to imply in any way a derivation from the water is required for the birds.
Okay.
Now, if I were to, for the sake of argument, if I were to say, fine, let's go with the Septuagint reading it that way, let's not understand the Hebrew as it stands, to then take the additional, and if I just grant you that, to take the additional step to this concordist approach, I think is still a tremendously giant leap.
Here's a just one more. By the way, I'm asking for your opinion on this. I'm not debating you on this. From Keel, like, do you like Keel's commentary on the Old Testament?
Keel, yeah, I mean, yeah. It's old.
Yeah. Let me screen share this again. What's your thoughts on what they say? Because they highlight the history on this. So let the waters swarm with swarms. So that's, I think, what you're trying to get at with that Hebrew word. And let birds and so on. And earlier translators, on the contrary, have rendered the latter as a relative clause.
Yeah.
Because the participle. Yeah. But they do say here, the expression applies not only to fishes, but to all water animals from the greatest to the least, including reptiles. And then they go back and forth between birds and fish in the rest of the commentary here. So, yeah, I mean, what I can do, Josh, I can give you 20 good commentaries of Genesis, past, present, and have you critique them, because I'd be genuinely interested in that.
Seriously, Rob, my critique is stop spending time doing this and go learn the language. Seriously, I think, and I mean that in all sincerity, I think it'll be a much better use of your time, and you are brilliant enough to be able to pick it up probably pretty quickly.
All right, I take that as a challenge.
No, I say that in all seriousness, Rob. You know what I think.
I'm serious. I'm wanting to take up the languages as well.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it'd probably be a lot easier than you might think.
And I'd like to hear how, if he does, how his maybe views change. Because I mean, as much as I love Robert,
I'm not a hard concordist. I think Dr. Bo knows that.
But I think you're an absolute genius. But I still think you have confirmation bias.
Yeah, but I think that's my point, right? Is that, Rob? I mean, I'm not brilliant in any way. I've just spent a lot of time working very hard. You remember every godforsaken thing that you read, and I don't know how you do it. And I think it would be incredibly easy, relatively speaking, for you to learn Greek and Hebrew.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, if you want to go up against him with PDEs, you get your ass handed to you. Because he knows PDEs. I think that, though, there's got to be confirmation bias there, because when you're coming from a position where you have a theistic belief, and I've been there. I mean, I had this same confirmation bias, decades ago. because you have that belief and you're like, okay, I have to like find a way to justify whatever I'm reading to fit that belief. And over the last, I don't know, couple of days, I stopped doing that. I'm looking at everything much more objectively now, especially in the last 5 years. I mean, clearly since I've been on the internet, I definitely strive to be as objective as possible. But I still see that in other people, especially when you have a particular belief system where you have to look for things to confirm it. That seems to be a lot of things I see from theists to say, oh, look, I want to, instead of trying to disconfirm what I believe, instead of trying to find evidence against what I believe, they always seem to be trying to find evidence for, and I think that's a wrong approach.
Just one quick question to Dr. Bowen, and
Sure.
Should I say Josh? Because I know you said.
Yeah, sure. Doesn't matter.
Okay, all right. And also a reflective question, which I have had well before this discussion, Josh. Would you? Okay, so even if I show you all the stuff that I've read that make that argument about the birds coming out of the waters, are they all actually deriving it ultimately from the Septuagint? Because in this case, the Septuagint's giving that reading.
Yeah, I mean,
not the Hebrew text.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I think I probably should make this really, really clear. In no way, I feel like I know Hebrew very well. I've got a lot of time in it, and I have a lot of other Semitic languages under my belt, and so linguistics is sort of what I do. So I'll take, if I look at the text in some detail, and take a hard line stance on it, there's probably good reason that I do so. That being said, there's no question whatsoever that I'm a fallible human being. So if you were to come back to me tomorrow and say, hey, actually I've learned Hebrew magically overnight, let me show you why you're wrong, I'll shake your hand.
I'll do it Tony Stark.
Yeah.
In the
give
movie.
him a week.
Last night.
Yeah, give him a week.
When did you learn about thermonuclear astrophysics? Last night. Yeah.
Now that I've said all that, I forgot your question.
The question was, all these commentators, they must be just using the Septuagint in their
I see. Yeah. So, there's a difference between, I think linguistically, there's a difference between a text should be translated some way and a text can be translated some way. Let me give you an example from the discussion earlier. It was at Hebrews 11:3, where we're looking at the use of hrema and ionos. And just because ionos can mean eternal, and there may therefore, perhaps by extension, time, in no way suggests that it should. And the fact that it says by his hrema, his word, his command, the ionos was created, which the translation world is an extraordinarily common translation of ionos. The natural...
Yeah.
Huh?
No, definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
because
the reason that they're translating it world is because of that. And I really do. I get that having a translation of time there would be beneficial to a certain view. And I would expect Hugh Ross's organization to support that, though I don't want to strawman them because I don't know that. But
actually, Hugh Ross doesn't know, because I brought it up and his eyebrows rose because I wanted to show Church Father comments, like not just Augustine, that speak about the finiteness of time. And curiously, there's one quote that sounds suspiciously like a Lawrence Krauss quote, because Krauss would like to say, the universe comes from nothing, but we need to define what nothing is. It's not nothing. It's quantum foam and so on. And Augustine says, the universe came from nothing, but nothing is not nothing. So again, there's this it's like these ideas seem to blend. And that's what fascinates me, on this side of the fence.
They make it very clear what they mean by those things. I mean, granted, Krauss, I think he took him to the chapter 9 till he actually kind of defined what he meant by nothing, but still.
Yeah. No, obviously from a more technical mathematical context of what nothing is. Obviously far beyond what Augustine would have imagined. But again, Augustine has this careful play of words that resonate uncannily, literally. That's the key word, uncannily, with what Krauss would say.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that Rob's trying to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the thing that he's finding interesting, and I find this interesting as well, is that, well, let me kind of back up. I understand your skepticism, Steve, in regards to Christians who like to try to force, the biblical text with modern scientific discoveries, right? And you kind of view it as trying to smash a round peg into a square hole. Totally get that. And that is a motivation for a lot of them. I totally admit that 100%. But the thing that's fascinating, though, is when you look at the early rabbinic writings, when you look at the writings of the church fathers, or the one that Rob just showed a little bit ago with Calvin, that was well before we had all these scientific theories. They didn't have that motivation. They didn't need to force science to fit in with their theology because that science didn't exist. And it's just really fascinating and interesting that they were coming to these conclusions without needing to have that motivation. So hopefully that makes sense how I explain it.
But the data.
Yeah, I get
they didn't
that.
have the data.
Again, they're common observations. Like, for example, the stretching out of the heavens kind of thing, the way concordants look at that. And yet that's not actually, there's nothing in there that actually even entails that. If I remember correctly, I think it was even Joss that actually mentioned it. It actually meant to stretch over like a tent. But that's how they've imagined the firmament in the heavens. But there's nothing in there to like universal acceleration. There's nothing in there that we can go, oh, look, they knew that space-time expanded. There's just no way that I could ever make that leap of reason by reading into that. I think that's completely post hoc.
Yeah, Steve, here's that quote I was talking about, the almost nothing.
Well, yeah, but again, that's how most people would think of ontology, right? I mean, they would probably say, "Oh, we weren't always around. At one time, there was nothing."
Steve, the argument is no one except for Augustine and the Church Fathers thought like this. That's my argument.
But he's talking about ex nihilo. He's not talking about scientific nothing, which isn't the case.
No, he's saying he's going back to all the quotes from Augustine that I'm showing you here is from Hebrews 11. So he's saying that this is Augustine's reasoning. From my reading of the text, time has a physical start. From my reading of the text, the universe comes from something that's almost nothing. Today we call that virtual particles. Back then they didn't have that term. They didn't have that concept. But the point is that why make a conclusion, Augustine? If we bring Augustine here in this room, why did you make that conclusion? He would say, because of the text. Then he would ask us the same question. Why make that conclusion? You and I would say quantum mechanics and math and science and so on. There's two fields that are making the same conclusion. Why is that the case?
Because what conclusion are they really making? What conclusion is they making from a scientific perspective? What are they saying?
They're saying that the universe has a finite start. It's not eternal.
Which we don't know yet. That's still undecided in science. They don't know that for a fact.
But
that's one of the great questions.
For example, I can show you in the 18th century when geology was, starting to take enterprise, that you have Christians using this material saying, no, the Earth is not eternal.
Okay, but
tectonic tectonic science and so on.
But this is what drives me nuts. You're taking one small thing and you build this entire narrative around it that just does not follow. I mean, how do you get?
It's not a tiny thing, Steve.
It is a pretty tiny thing.
It's a lot going on because people.
Wait, we don't even know if the universe had a beginning. So how does that even follow when you're saying that they had? And by the way, I don't think it's a jump of faith to say, "Oh, wait." I don't think it's a jump in reasoning to say, you know what? Most things we knowledge have beginnings. Yeah, the universe probably had a beginning. I don't think that's true. And by the way, it all depends on how you look at things. I mean, if you really want to get a nuanced shit, you could say, well, everything that begins to exist, must have a cause. Oh, wait, let's get into the Kalam now. I don't think that's
why did Einstein fudge his own general relativity equation?
Because he had to have a cosmological constant to it, because he didn't account for dark energy, because he didn't know what dark energy was.
No, but there's other reasons why. Because
Yeah,
he
he
wanted an eternal universe, right?
That's
And
true.
he wanted static and all that, right?
Yeah.
And then he goes, "That's my big one."
He didn't like the fact that the universe.
I can then show you from those. I can then show you from those historian of science books that I refer to in the debate. And these are people not Christian. These are just scientists doing their work, that looking at history. That Einstein was philosophically motivated to do that, and the Christians, so like Georges Lemaitre and so on, they were opposing Einstein's work, saying, no, if you introduce a fudge factor, you're wrong. Einstein, in front of their lecture, says, your calculations are right, but your conclusions are abominable. Like, I'm quoting him literally.
Yeah, but you're missing the bigger picture of why Einstein actually did it. The value he came up with was actually based upon mathematics.
Why were the Christian cosmologists?
I'm telling you.
Why were the Christian cosmologists arguing for a finite start?
First of all, again, the values he came up with actually were sensical. He didn't put I don't like the term fudge factor. It wasn't a fudge factor because there's a reason, like you said, there was for it, and it actually came out to be exactly what I believe the negative the dark energy would be. So it depends on what you put on the side of the metric equation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he didn't like the fact that the model for the universe was some kind of static, not changing universe, right?
Einstein?
Yeah.
He didn't like it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he wanted it to be static.
I'm sorry. It's the opposite. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He didn't like the fact that the way things were looking, that the universe wasn't static, and he wanted a more static model, right? Yeah. But that wasn't the primary reason why for the fudge factor. I don't think it might be just true. I'll take your word for that.
Trust me.
But
I'll give you the book.
No.
It's called Cosmology and Controversy. And
have faith, Steve.
Yeah. What?
Have faith.
Have faith. But again, you have this huge ontological narrative that you have of these little snippets that have meant nothing of value until the modern day, where we've developed these modern scientific theories. They didn't mean anything. Nobody looked at any of these passages 500,000 years ago and said, hey, let's read this, and because of this, I can develop the Big Bang Theory. They were useless. So you may look back and say post hoc, oh, they got some things right, but no more than the average person would have done just by the knowledge they had of the day, going, oh, look, things have a beginning. Universe may have had a beginning. The stars might be moving, this and that. It's just, there's nothing to latch on to as far as any kind of meat to that narrative.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
One thing that's important to realize is that both in the Jewish tradition and also in the Catholic tradition is that it wasn't just the text that was being transmitted. When the Torah was given on Mount Sinai to Moses, an oral Torah was given as well, and the rabbis were given the teaching authority to explain these things. And it's the same thing in Catholicism, where you have the oral tradition and you also have the magisterium. Mm-hmm. So when you look like, in the Bible text, it's not saying these things specifically, and you're 100% correct. Things are being read into it, but the things that are being read into, and I can't speak in terms of Augustine or Calvin because that's way outside my wheelhouse, but it's part of that tradition. It's being transmitted along with the text.
And these are human beings wanting to ask questions the way you and I ask questions. For example, remember you brought that female on? She's in Australia. She's an astronomer.
Yeah,
a young
Kirsten Banks. She's going to be on here again soon.
That's right, because I forgot her name, but thanks for reminding me. Yeah, okay. I'm really happy to see an indigenous person like herself go head on with the science, because that is so rare to see. And I'm talking from an Australian context here, being in Australia. Anyway, she's just released a preprint paper about Aborigines roughly 50,000 years ago, looking at the stars and making observations, and then making connections with the animals in their vicinity, like certain birds would be related to certain planets and so on. And they even had sophisticated insights. So the question is, well, not really a question. It's more like an observation. These people, these ancient humans, had remarkable. They had a remarkable, like a word similar to like encouragement, but some form of drive to go at this at full steam. Obviously, they're far less in sophistication compared to today, but the fact is they had that drive, and their models that we can dig up today is remarkably sophisticated. So
again, I believe they have drives. I mean, these people wanted to know about reality. They want to know about how things worked. I mean, that's where science came from, wanting to learn about observations and explanations for them.
Right.
I mean, you had Brack had mentioned about magisteria. Like, I think there's non-overlapping magisteria. I think there is a difference between how we look at things from a scientific point of view, and then from a non-scientific point of view. And that doesn't necessarily have to be religious. I know, Gould's really big into that separation of religion and science. But I think for non-overlapping magisteria, it can be science or anything that's non-science. And back then there wasn't no non-overlapping magisteria, because most of the things back then were intertwined with each other. It was not normal to not think there was a God. It was accepted ubiquitously that there was some type of God. What God you believe in, who knows? But I don't think during those times many people were non-believers or atheists, right? So of course they wanted to know, and they said, okay, God may have created everything. We don't know how he did it per his power, but we still have natural law. And so how did he do it? How does these things work via natural law? That's where science literally came from, natural philosophy.
Yeah. But notice the cycle. My argument ultimately, going back to Mr. Atheist, is that the psychology. So, and I in fact, since Josh is in here, this is a perfect opportunity to pass this. I want to see if he agrees with this or not. In Galatians 4, if you can go there, Josh, and
Sure.
look at the Greek as well. Okay. Where Paul says, this is just after verse 5 somewhere, verse 6 or something, that you people, and he's speaking generically as well, including the non-Jews, were slaves to things that were not gods at all. And even Richard Carrier would make this argument that the context of chapter 4 is all about cosmic stuff, that you had the Greek and Roman religions that associated the planets with gods and so on. And here's Paul, a Jew, obviously in the context of a monotheistic faith, saying, no, none of these things in the sky are gods. The elemental spirits, I think some translations have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this psychological drive then where future generations that read that text will then go with a methodological naturalism that the atheists would love people to.
Right, but why did they come up with methodological naturalism? Let's say there's a bunch of theists.
Which Paul is saying to do.
Right. They all believe that's the whole point why they have methodological naturalism. Because, look, even if you posit a God is the creator for everything, it doesn't give you an explanation for shit. It doesn't say why does the ball fall to the ground, right? So even theists wanted some kind of methodological naturalism where you don't end up with some reductionist approach saying, okay, well, the overall reason for everything is God, because that doesn't tell you shit.
But guess who's arguing not to do the methodological naturalism, and that's the pagans whom Paul was arguing against.
Okay, well, the pagans were stupid.
That's what I'm getting at. So again, the Christian model is driving.
And God's real.
Yeah, there you go. Pagans were wrong. God's real. Let's go home.
Well, shit,
I'm not making that argument.
We need
either.
a rag
All
to
I'm
figure this
saying
shit
is,
out for us.
No, I'm not even making that argument either. All I'm saying is, here's a model of, in this case, Christian theology that made humans progress towards a goal which now we enjoy with Google Hangouts and all that.
Well, yeah, sure, but they all added to that. Whether you're pagan, theist, Christian, Muslim, they all added to the body of knowledge and the
not
body
really.
Of bullshit.
Muslims did not do anything.
Muslims didn't add anything to the body of science, really?
No.
Wow.
They gave us the Renaissance.
In fact, I have quotes of Muslims who became atheists that then write saying, no, any books that you have that are quote unquote satanic, they considered the Greek sciences almost satanic.
How's that do them adding to science and mathematics that they did?
I must admit, this is a first for me to hear.
Oh,
Yeah, I
Josh
got.
just agreed that I have a memory.
I've never heard that the Muslims never contributed anything to.
Yeah, the Arabs, they gave us algebra, they gave us trigonometry, they
No,
finessed astronomy.
no, that was just
They didn't
that's
give us
because
that.
God's real.
They didn't
Was
give us
that Rex?
algebra.
No, because God's real.
How did they not
The
give
math-
us
That
algebra?
was the Anunnaki from Zeta Reticula.
What? You mean Anunnaki?
Anunnaki, yeah, whatever. I don't read any of that stuff.
Oh, Josh, did you get my email about that? About you did like a ancient alien. And I gave you like
yes. Hey, yeah. Since we're going into review mode here, Josh, do you want to like, if you don't mind, and I wish Megan would actually if she was there, but would you kind of go into your 10-second summation of all that from that show?
Summation of what?
The ancient alien sphinx, ancient Wi-Fi.
Oh, I have to admit, I stopped paying attention. Megan was the one that was.
I know. I was talking to her, and we were having a blast, actually.
Yeah, I mean, she felt bad. That's what I can say. At the end of it, she felt bad because I think she felt like she offended Kyle.
No, not at all. I think she felt she needed a drink.
Yeah, she did. She did.
That was pretty. I was entertaining. Don't get me wrong. I really did enjoy it, and I'd love to have discussions like that. But
I'll tell you,
I
the
don't
thing
believe
that
any of
frustrates her, and I'm going to be careful what I say here, but I think the thing that frustrates her is that, and it's the same sort of thing that can frustrate me, is archaeologists, for example, work exceptionally hard. It takes a very long time to get the training that's required to become an archaeologist. And even then, I dug in Syria. It's very, very difficult to do. And even then, it's still debated, how to deal with the data. But the things that are debated are much more narrow. And then when someone comes along and makes what I consider to be very outlandish claims based on very little data, very little sound data, and then impugns all of the work and effort of archaeologists that have worked so hard in the field, that gets under our skin. And I feel some of that at times in these areas, and I don't mean from anybody in here, but it can be very easy to look up some things and to read an English text and to determine, oh, well, this is what this text means. There's a meme, I think, that there's a preacher standing up at a pulpit, and he says, 60 scholars over the past 200 years, with 64 PhDs between them have translated this text, but today I'm going to tell you what the Greek actually says. And that sort of hubris is it's frustrating.
We have people in
that's
our own
what I think
community that
she's
do that.
reacting to.
Yeah, no, we definitely have people in our own community that do that. Somebody said we need to talk to Maggie about the Wi-Fi pyramids. Yeah, I fully intend to one of these days. But no, we do have people in our community the exact same thing, which is funny because we have so many brilliant people in the Great Debate community, and then all these different channels, and many of them do have masters and PhDs, and even the ones that don't, they're just smart people. Yeah, then we get Rags. We don't know how he snuck in, but for the most part, people
the little small spaces, little holes.
He's like this ooze. It just kind of creeps in.
I'm just the resident layman. Just run things by me, and I'll tell you how they sound.
He makes a good sounding board. Oh God, damn engine. Yeah. Okay. Let's get rid of that. That totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So we have people in the community that have never gone to college, never opened a textbook, never self-educated themselves, are not autodidactic, and pretty much are, I would say, and I don't know if there's a scientific term, but I think the term total fuckwits would suffice. Trying to explain to people that have studied their entire lives the topics, and it's not just arrogance and hubris; it's delusion. It's completely delusional. Go ahead.
And I think that's the thing. If you were to get Zachariah Sitchin in here, may he rest in peace.
He's passed away.
Yeah. if you were to get him in here and you were to have him articulate his position, I think that you would find that he could make to somebody that doesn't know Sumerian, for example, a very convincing case, one that it would be difficult to really speak hard against, because he would say, this Sumerian word says this Sumerian sign means this, this archaeological find means this. And if you're not schooled in those things, it can sound very convincing. And it's problematic then when you push back against somebody like that having a position of expertise in that field, and they still hold to it, and they still say, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I do. It's like, yeah, that's what Megan was.
Right. And even then, but, people don't agree with Stitchin at all. Everybody who I've ever talked to and everything I've ever read said that he didn't know Sumerian as much as anywhere near what he thought he did. But at least he tried to educate himself on it. And like Velikovsky, I'm sure you're familiar with the Velikovsky incident. They chastised him and people have gone after him for being, unscientific. But I think for his day, he probably was trying to be scientific. I don't think he was trying to come up with weird, misrepresentations and mischaracteristics. He was taking the knowledge of the times, and we have the benefit of hindsight. So I don't think Velikovsky was some huge conspiracy nut. But what I think that you're right, when eventually you reach a point where you do have so many experts and a consensus going, look at, you're just wrong.
Yeah,
you really need to reevaluate position, because no matter how right I think I am, if I have 100 PhDs in a topic telling me, no, Steve, you have a conceptual error, I'm going to fucking go and find out what that conceptual error is, because that's what's more likely the case, that I have a conceptual error or that I know more than all the experts telling me that I'm wrong.
That's right.
So because I guarantee it, I don't think there's been a case in history where, one minor case. There's only been one case where I think the experts were wrong, and that the normal people had called them out on it. That was the only time I've ever seen it happen, and that was with the Monty Hall problem.
Is it true that Sitchin was like the Ken Hovind of Sumerian stuff? Because even Heiser has said that Sitchin could not even differentiate between Aramaic and Hebrew.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that would be giving him probably too much credit, because I feel like Hovind, as bad as he is, I mean, I'm not a scientist, so maybe I don't understand that.
No, Hovind's hopelessly wrong, though. There's no credit.
Okay. Well, yeah, all right. I mean, so one of the things, for example, one of the things that Sitchin said was that the word dinger, which means God in Sumerian, is a combination of the word din and gear. The problem is that there is no N in the word dingir. Sumerian has a nasalized G letter that it uses. So it's an G. So there is no N. It's just the G is pronounced So it would be D-I, nasalized G, I-R. So there is no N. So it can't be din because there's no N. So I wonder if he knew Sumerian at all, really, because that's pretty basic.
And the Anunnaki are the people of the fiery rockets.
Yeah, I mean,
and Nephilim, he connected the word Nephilim with that as well. And
but how do you believe that narrative? I mean, why would you trust somebody where everybody's saying, "Hey, he doesn't know what he's talking about"? Matter of fact, when I asked I guess not a doctor, but Brian Forster the other day, I had asked him specifically this question for a reason, because I want to know what he thought about Sardonia and the pyramids on Mars. Somebody actually asked in the live chat, but I want to ask him anyways. We know now that's all bullshit. We know Richard C. Hoagland was a fucking fraud, and he didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. And he's been peddling that bullshit for ages, right? Yeah, but they've gone there. We know what the fuck it is. We know it's a mountain. It's not a face. It was pareidolia. We all know this. End of discussion. This isn't the 1970s any longer, right? Well, although he's still, trying to promote it. But here's a guy though, Brian Forster. He hasn't got the memo.
Did you know how Hoagland argued against that, Steve, recently? Even though we have high-res images.
Is it on the Enterprise mission? What?
He said, I just love this reasoning. The aliens designed it like that so that over a long distance, it would then give the impression that it's a face.
Oh God! Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was Tyler that asked. I knew his live chat was coming. It was Tyler that asked that question. He got a triple bingo. He asked all three questions and got all three weird answers. But no, how could they have No, it's clearly a natural formation.
It is. Obviously, it is.
Yeah, I mean, we have high-res definition.
But the aliens fine-tuned it like that so that, because of where Mars is positioned and the distance involved, and obviously our telescopes and light hitting and all that. They calculated all that to give a perfect impression of a face.
Yeah, but it's funny that you recognize that, General. But I think people make the same. They accuse you of doing something similar sometimes when it comes to the.
Oh, not at all, Steve.
I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying I think you're being accused of it, but I don't know.
Nah.
But nowhere near that bad. I mean, obviously Hoagland was fraud. You're a genius. Yeah, I would never compare you to Hoagland. You're one smart motherfucker. That's I know. But yes, JMD, go ahead.
Oh, so Dr. Bowen said something in the stream on the non-sequitur show. Well, did you say faith was essentially you assume something before connecting facts?
No, I'm saying that people that that have faith, particularly theistic faith, I think probably anybody that has faith, you have data points, and those data points ultimately have to be connected by assumptions. I mean, that's just how this stuff works.
Mm-hmm.
Well, does not everyone have presuppositions when doing a certain methodology?
Yeah,
yes, of course.
Yeah. That would sort of be my view.
But here's I think what Josh was going for.
Okay.
Because you let him finish. Correct me if I'm wrong, Josh. We have assumptions, but you don't use assumptions to take the data points and find a corollary between them unless those assumptions are validated by certain reasoning. We don't have arbitrary assumptions. We don't assume anything unless there's a reason to assume it, and even then, it must be a valid assumption. And if you go after the conclusions from those assumptions, one of the ways to do it is to attack the assumptions. But I got to tell you, that's one of the most difficult ways of attacking something. Like if I say, hey, look I write a theory, I write a paper, and it has to do with some theory, even like relativity. I want to attack relativity, but I'm going to go about it by attacking the uniformity of nature, right? That's going to be a hard way to try to disprove general relativity by saying, well, we don't know what tomorrow is going to be like. Therefore, the projectile is not going to go in the orbit that we think it's going to go in because GR might change. That you don't want to argue that way. See? Would that make sense, Josh?
I would completely agree.
Which, by the way, just based on that point you made, Steve, which is very important, and I don't want to, but that is again the basis for why early Christian scientists like Maxwell. Oh, hang on, someone's. If you can mute Clockwork. Yeah, so people like Maxwell, the uniformitarianism of nature, that they obviously in this case they had God as the head to put their faith in, so that the universe won't be arbitrarily, the laws will change every day or something. But the pagan religions, being in a polytheistic context, they had that fear that at one moment something may change, another moment. But in the monotheistic context, they didn't have that fear. They knew the regularity of nature would proceed onwards.
Well, I think that was a false assumption on their part because of what they grounded.
Yeah, they believed it.
Yeah, because look, if I say, look,
yeah.
there's a weird way to look at that. If I say, I accept the uniformity of nature. By the way, it's not uniformitarianism of nature. That uniformitarianism is a geological terms that.
Yeah, I know. I meant
catastrophism. But okay, so the uniformity of nature. If I assume that it is the case that uniformity of nature is true, and then I say, well, that's contingent upon God not changing anything. I don't know if God's going to change anything. He could fuck up the uniformity of nature anytime he wants to. That's not a way to ground it.
I agree.
Rex, you got a lot of static, I think.
It's that psychological drive is what I'm getting at again. Yeah.
Well, people want there's a psychological drive to have consistency. People don't like things changing when it comes to that. They want to get out of
their assumption.
But they want to be able to get out of bed and know the ground is beneath them, kind of thing, right? They want to know that the uniformity of nature is going to be such that the sun's going to rise.
So would you
have? But you
have. Hang on. This static's killing me. Who's?
Oh, that was me. I was just going to ask, do you trust in the uniformity of nature then?
No, it's not you. I don't think. Somebody's got weird static. I'm just going to mute people until I find it. So if I mute you, just unmute. Who is that? No, is it JMD? Nope. I don't know who. I just
Yes,
muted
Oh,
everybody.
you, Steve, this whole goddamn
It
time.
can't be me.
It's not me.
Jen, was it you?
It's not
Nope.
me.
Oh, it just stopped. Whoever muted. Okay. Wow. Because yeah, that drives me nuts. Now, were you asking me? Do I accept the uniform nature? Yeah, of course I do. It's an assumption. So what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's simply my point. It's. I don't want to say it's. I would essentially say faith is just trust, and that it could be blind, reasonable, or very unreasonable in certain cases.
Yeah, and I don't think faith and blind faith are synonymous terms. I think that I think Mr. Atheist kind of, if I remember correctly, kind of threw them together. No, faith.
Steve,
you can have
this
rational
is
faith.
this is actually a very good question, which I'm sure you might know more in this area than I would, because I know you read a lot on this, and it's a genuine question.
I don't read shit. I make things up as I go along, like a motherfucker, dude. Yeah. What the hell?
Why, like this is something we always tackle the young earth creationists with, because they like Humphreys, for example, the radiometric decay rates arbitrarily are faster in the past, speed of light changes, all that. But we know that when we look out at distant quasars, the speed of light's the same, all that stuff. But it is a genuine question. Why is it constant? No matter where you look in the universe, the laws of physics are the same everywhere as time progresses forward,
we know
as
of.
the universe ages.
That we know of.
As far as we know, yeah.
Yeah, and also
As far as we know,
the constants might change. I mean, there is some evidence, as you know.
But the variance is so tiny, it's negligible. It's
I'm gonna narrow this fucking thing down. Hang on one sec. God damn it! I'm gonna narrow this down. Don't be unmute. No, I don't know who this is. Rags is the only one left. Weird. I'm still getting this weird static from somebody. Okay, maybe I'll come back in.
Well, it's not me.
No, it's not you.
It's you,
Strange.
Steve.
No, I'm hearing it as well. Like,
Yeah, you're
Steve,
hearing it as well.
I just heard it.
Rags.
Yeah, I'm still hearing it.
No,
everyone,
it's
okay. Everyone mute. Everyone mute right now. Okay, I think it's JMD. Do you still hear us, Steve?
Oh, I hear it when he's muted. Hang on. I don't know. It's one of you guys. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna blame it as a sandering in the live
I think
stream.
it might be.
Could be you, Max. Could be you.
No, I don't know. It's
not.
It's really quiet in here. This is a pretty good mic. I don't think it is.
It's not. All right, but anyways, so let's get back to the uniform.
Like, why do we tell the young earth creationists the laws of nature will remain consistent regardless of your arguments? Where's the evidence for that? That in the future, the laws of nature will remain consistent. Obviously, there's a variance there, but it's consistent.
Well, yeah, because they have been consistent in the past, and so we can say that we don't know for 100% absolute certain that they will for all time into the future, but it doesn't look like there's any reason to believe otherwise, given their past, behavior.
What I'm getting at is there something intrinsic in nature that we can scientifically go, here's empirical evidence why, not dealing with the past, like something like a law in nature.
No, there's no law that we can say that, oh, look, the future is going to be the same as it was yesterday. No, absolutely not. That's why it must be an axiomatic assumption. Now, I mean, look at it this way. We'll go back to the decay rates, right? Okay. So Humphreys posits the accelerated decay to account for millions and millions of years. And I say millions because he's dealing with zircons when he's doing these testings and stuff. So there's about 250 million years of radioactivity to account for. And the only way to do that and accounting for it in a period of 7,000 years is to basically come up with what's called an accelerated decay, which would account for the amount of thermal energy that's being released. And that's fine. If you want to posit that, God bless you. Sure. The problem I have is that when I've asked Humphreys, so what is the evidence I can go look at to see that this accelerated decay is something that exists, not just as possible. Sure, possible. We'll give that.
Say it, Josh.
Do you know what he refers to me every time? Okay, thanks, Josh. He refers to me to one of his blogs on somewhere, and I'm like, but this is all secondary sourcing. What studies have been done to demonstrate accelerated decay? The only thing that can change the decay rate of a particle is basically there is some evidence that certain temperature, pressure, and environmental factors might have a minor amount, but mainly it's K capture. And K capture is just a form what's called electron capture, is when the electrons in the s orbital get compressed into the nucleus, basically, and that causes the protons to absorb the electrons and form a neutron. So yeah, that can happen, and it's a very small percentage, like 0.2, I think, 0.8 on some things. It's very small, but there's nothing that I've seen from anything I've ever read that will ever get the amount of heat that you need to account for in 7,000 years to 2,000 or 250 million years. That's orders of magnitude difference. And there's one other isolated instance with beryllium-8 where decay rates can change because it's a type of excited atom where it has really changed the amount of decay time for beryllium-8, but it's very unique, and I don't remember the reasoning for it. I read a paper on it once, but it was definitely a specific type of excited state of this atom, not a normal ground state atom. So that could affect it. But anyways, yeah, he posits these things, but he doesn't prove it. Well, I shouldn't say, but he doesn't demonstrate it. He doesn't show what the evidence for accelerated decay is.
Oh yeah, he ignores that part.
Always.
Yeah, and I think the last nail in the coffin. I'm wondering if ironically, if Hugh Ross has actually written a blog post. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a scientific explanation as to why.
I don't think he ignores it exactly. I think he just avoids the question because there isn't actual evidence.
Yeah, it's more fundamental than that, because I have asked him. I've talked to him quite a bit about this, and it really boils down to this, David. The reason why there's evidence for accelerated decay is because there's no other option. And therefore, the Earth is young. The only option is accelerated decay. Therefore, it must exist. That's it. That's really what
they
mindset
presume
is.
the Earth is young based on crappy
No. They don't presume the They don't presume the Earth is young.
reasoning, basically.
Yes, it's very circular. They don't presume the Earth is wrong or young. They tell you the Earth is young. It's not presupposition anymore to some of these people. It is a foregone conclusion.
No, they have to derive it from somewhere.
Well, initially, I think you do, but at a certain point, I think that they accept that the Earth is young and nothing can change that. And so whatever you have to do to come up with to find a narrative for that, they do. And that accelerated decay is
So it's
something
no
that must
different from flat
exist.
earthers.
Yeah, same principle.
All right. Well, that's.
I mean, it's kind of like that. What was it called? Something Vitus Vitalis, where I don't remember the name of it, but it's something Vitalis, where they asked the guy, well, how do you know Vitalis exists? Which was like this force of nature that imbued life with movement and made things living. And he said, well, if it didn't exist, then he wouldn't be around to ask if it existed or not. And I'm like, that's circular. He just basically asserted that it exists. Maybe the live chat knows what I'm talking about. I think it was Vitalis something or other.
Hey, is Cy God wanting him?
I asked Cy if he wanted him, but I didn't get a response. Oh, and by the way, yeah, I never let theist in here, do I? I'm just so hard on theist. I'm a bad man that just attacks Christianity all the time. Good Lord. I still get that. No, I'm not shitting. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. I still get that all the time. Oh, Steve's rooms are nothing but an echo chamber where he just bashes on Christians all day long.
That's messed
really
up.
Real. I'm like,
Steve, you should just have a playlist of all the hangouts you've had Christians in, and I wouldn't be surprised if the playlist would encompass 90% of your videos on your channel.
It would. Literally.
Well, there's a lot of people who hate my guts who have never watched my videos too, so that's how it goes.
Wait, anybody has watched your videos?
I think I've been told they're all bots, but the bots give me money and shit, so that's fine.
That's okay. Well, then you got it made. I'm not going to make this.
Hey,
go ahead.
I'm a bully apparently because I quote people what the Bible actually says.
How yeah, people come up with all kinds of weird things.
Also, just a shout out to what I put on my channel. There's a reason why I'm not, saying that just like that. You know the Ben the Baptist guy. I wanted to.
God.
I wanted to juxtapose what Ben the Baptist was saying, that he just wants to be mean. So I juxtaposed what he said with from one of my favorite, I guess you could say, interpretations of Jesus in video form. So I put the two together, and they're just so polar opposite. Skylar actually loved it. He loved the comparison.
I have to watch it. But I said I'm
it's
not
so
gonna
sick.
One sec. Oh shit! One sec. I'm not going to mention this guy's name because I don't want to give him any what's the word?
Yeah,
I don't want to
man.
give attention. I don't want to give attention, basically.
Brad Towel.
And I said, no. It's not Towel. But somebody else had actually just recently wrote a blog piece, and they just really, and this is not the first time they've done this. They've done it more than one time, but they really went off on me and the great debate community as just being a vitriolic circle jerk of atheists that just go attacking Christians and harassing people, blah blah blah.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but I don't mention the name. And so, I mean, I'm not going to address it on the fact that nobody reads this fucking blog, anyways, right?
Hitler.
Yeah. So, I'm not upset by it because I'm like, I know how this person is. They're delusional, but it's clear they have no idea who the fuck I am, even though we've known each other for a very long time. They don't know they don't no idea what the great debate community is, because they'll make stupid comments like something along the lines of, "Oh, well, such and such got kicked out of the great debate community." No, they were never in it to begin with. They were in the live chat of the Non Sequitur Show. The Non Sequitur Show is not the great debate community. It kind of arised from it in some ways, but if you don't know the difference, you're not qualified to write a blog piece on it, right? And so, I mean, it's just, we all get it. You know, we all get these people that don't watch our shit, that just want to make snap judgments because, you know what? It gives them some kind of notoriety. I don't want to give that to them anymore. I don't like that kind of drama shit. I'm all for punching up and shit like that. I don't. But, you know, if you want to come after me, at least do so honestly, you know? I don't ban anybody from coming in here if you want to, you know, challenge me on something. But don't sit there and make a blog piece on me and the great debate community when you don't know who the fuck they are. That's just stupid.
Well, if you're online and you have your group of buddies and friends that you always talk to, and two of them say, "Hey, person X is a butthole to theists," then you're like, "Man, I believe that. You both said it, and I don't want to go check it out for myself because I don't want to see somebody being a butthole to theists." So it just spreads like that, and it catches.
Sure.
It's like, why would they said these bad things about this person? Why would I want to watch that myself?
Yeah, well, if I said, "Hey, look at Rags, man. He's that guy with that game and stuff that all he does is bash on social justice warriors, and he treats women like shit, and he's racist, and he's misogynistic, and, you know, all that kind of crap." Some people might actually believe that, only because they might have seen certain excerpts from your videos without understanding the context, right? But
I'm telling you, man, you tell people the Holocaust was a lie one time,
get
and
after
they
your life,
just
you tell them it was 11 million Jews versus 11.5 million, and they just go up your ass. I know. People wonder if that's a real dog speaking. Yeah, he's actually a real dog. Yeah,
I am.
Yeah.
Remember in Aristocats when the mama cat was straightening up like the bow on the little cat, and her paws turned into like opposable thumbs? That's basically how it works. But I know you're thinking it, so there's the answer. I just gave you all that time.
You evolved.
We're getting meta with our references here.
So that's how you put your glasses on, then.
No, the glasses. Those no. Those are magic.
Oh shit! Well, I got you in here because I can't. I'm not going to keep this on too much longer. It's getting late. Rags, what did you think? And I'm so sorry I didn't get a chance to kind of have a off air with you and Ian. I really need to one of these days. But what do you think of the Sargon discussion?
I haven't seen it yet.
You're fucking out of here. Get it. You're gone.
I just haven't seen it yet.
Really?
There's a lot of stuff I haven't.
It was so good, dude.
I bet it was, yeah. But I just haven't watched it yet.
Wait, Steve, do you agree with Sargon?
Not really. I mean, okay. There's there's a lot of things Sargon says that I don't agree with him with. However, there's a lot of things that he says I do agree with.
Can you briefly, because I'm speaking as an Australian, totally outside the whole left-right sort of situation going on in America.
Lucky
and I'm not even, I guess, interested in that. But whenever I do see Sargon talk, I do notice some form of like conservative, like semi-right.
No, he's a classical liberalist. He's definitely classical.
Right. I don't know the terms. I may be even getting them wrong, but sometimes I personally don't mind what he says. Like I find some of them rational, but then so when you say, oh, you disagree.
Well, I mean, he's like a 9/11 truther. I can't stand that.
Used to be.
Oh, is he?
I don't know. Is he still
because
is or not?
because you see when you say you disagree, I'm genuinely interested because I find I haven't looked at everything he said, but the little things I've seen him say, I'll go, yeah, that's a good point.
When it comes to the SJW stuff, I agree with him, like I do with Rags and Ian. I think that what they talk about, when they're coming after the SJWs that are the extremists that are trying to shut down conversation in the name of intersectionality, and they're the ones actually saying we want to have free discussions, except you're not invited to be in that discussion. That's kind of the approach they take. Yeah, I'm all for him on that.
Okay, because that's all I've seen of him. I haven't seen anything else. Yeah,
and I think he did really well in that discussion, and I think so did Brittany. I think he was running this. I'm not spoiling this for you, Brother Rags, but it's not like a TV show, but I'm giving you spoilers of what happened. But
I have a feeling that I might know how it goes down because I've watched a lot of these kinds of things before. So don't worry too much about spoilers.
Okay, so then this might make sense to you. Sargon told Brittany if she investigated intersectionality more, he thinks that she would probably change her perspective on it, because it's one of those things.
It might be.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
It might be because a lot of. Well, yeah, that's the thing. A lot of this stuff is really superficially appealing.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Like if you look at it at face value, it seems like a great idea. But then you say, let's stop. Let's think about where does it go? Where does the next step take us? Where does this lead to? What is the principle behind it? And it really isn't really all that great. Like who doesn't want an equal society, right? And it's like, well, but then when you think about it, it's like, but everyone's different.
What's the end game? Yeah, and I asked, I thought Brittany was very, very moderate. I was really impressed by her.
I've never heard of her actually. What was her last name?
Simon.
Brittany Simon. The name doesn't ring a bell.
I had asked her. I said, look, if I don't take the label of feminism, does that insult you? Because I'm against third, fourth, fifth wave feminism. I think it's radicalized. I think it's separatist. But I'm all for second wave. I'm an egalitarian. I believe obviously women should have the exact same rights as men.
I'm a big fan of like Christina Hoff Summers and a lot of that stuff.
Sure.
But you look at like Sargon's country. He's from the UK, right?
Mm-hmm.
And over there, like 4% of women and like 9% of men consider themselves feminist. I mean, it clearly has a very, very negative connotation, and it didn't just happen for no reason.
Right. Well, because when you have people like Steve Shives proclaiming to be, feminism, and he's just a fucking cuck. Yeah.
Steve Shives, there was a guy who messaged me today on Discord, and he's like, "Who is this guy? I don't even make tweets on Twitter. I just listen to people, and I'm blocked by this guy." And Yep. That's Steve Shives.
Oh, I'm blocked by him too. I got found out I'm blocked by Wesley Crusher.
Oh yeah,
Will Wheaton. Yeah, you know who I blame for that? That was Ian's fault.
Will Wheaton.
Just because I'm friends with Ian, and Ian pissed him off. I think he blocked everybody.
Here's another thing that sounds superficially appealing is hate speech is bad. Well, what is hate speech? Who defines that? That's another one.
Yeah, I'm a big
sounds good on the surface.
Oh yeah, they'll call anything that disagrees with them hate speech.
Right.
That's the problem. And it's like, look, I know what hate speech is. That's not it. If I disagree with you, it's not. If I don't want to call you by your preferred pronoun, which sure I might be an asshole, but it's not hate speech.
Right. Yeah, like I think one of the things that happens is that when you're in just common, just in colloquial lingo, when you're talking with people on the lines and out and about in the real world, a lot of the times when you say stuff like that, they get one idea in their head when really it's something else. So like when you say hate speech, it's like, no, I don't want people to do hate speech, right? It's like you shouldn't say it, really. I mean, just from a niceness perspective. But if you're not free to hate, then you're not free.
Right.
And
totally
it's
agree.
just a natural cost you have to pay with being in a free society, is that some people might make you really upset and some people might really offend you and they might say some nasty, horrible things. And the cure to solving that issue that you have emotionally with that is to learn how to steel your nerves against it and to learn how to just take it and accept it. And it's not to make everything else in the world besides you cushioned, because you're not going to be able to do it. Like only one of those two options can actually be done. That's why when I hear things, nothing bothers me anymore, because I've just sort of developed an immunity to a lot of that. And that's possible to do. So you should go down that road. Do the thing that can be done.
And society kind of filters that shit out. I mean, look at the backlash with like the Westboro Baptist Church, right? Even the most fucked up haters can't stand them, right? I mean, so society tends to kind of filter out these kinds of hate speech, and even when you have like even racist rhetoric, society kinds of filters it out. Sure, there's going to be some people that buy into it, but the vast majority denounce it.
That's just reality. You can't convince 100% of people about anything. That's why people think the earth is flat. There's just don't. Sargon says this, and I agree with what he means by it when he says, we're not looking for a perfect society. We're looking for good enough. Right. And you should always strive to improve, of course, but it's a lot of times when you're looking at how do we get 100%? How do we get complete and total perfection? And that makes you try to go about that with methods of execution that
you can't reach it. It's the goal, but it's not.
Guys, I mean, it's a noble thing.
Seeing what humans are, that's never going to happen.
Guys, I'm going to head off. Steve, thanks again.
Thank you, buddy. Always pleasure, General.
You're an excellent moderator, I guess. I don't know how else to put it.
Have a good night, General.
Goodbye.
Right. Bye, thank you, buddy.
Wait. General Han Solo is your name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he did shoot first.
What did you think of the Han Solo movie?
Oh. Okay.
No.
Let me ask a more appropriate question. What does the Bible say about the Han Solo movie?
Actually, Jesus is very happy with the Solo movie. So
he's dead and naked. I don't know.
I didn't watch it, but I heard it's pretty good, except the critics.
It's if you turn your brain off, it's okay.
Okay,
which is a shame.
Let me put it this way.
God,
I got so upset with the Last Jedi movie that I literally went in reluctantly into the movie. Like my brother actually was dying to see it because he's a diehard Star Wars fan, and he was just like, yeah, for the sake of tradition, seeing these movies in the cinema, come on, let's do it. And I kid you not, I actually was angry walking in, going, I don't want to see this.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way now. I hated The Last Jedi. Garbage.
And I went and saw Solo, and I was genuinely impressed to see like a swashbuckling sort of like an Indiana Jones style, like especially the last fight when you see Solo fight that main bad guy at the end, and it's obviously it's not some lightsaber fight. It's a genuine man-on-man struggle, and there is a story to it, and I think that far exceeds the SJW situation that we see in Last Jedi. So in my opinion, Solo superseded big time on that.
Yeah, I think Solo was. I don't think it was a good movie at all, but I could turn my brain off and enjoy it.
Yeah,
but it was definitely better than The Last Jedi.
Oh yeah. So
Sucker Punch is better than The Last Jedi.
But you see, that's why I enjoyed it, because I went in expecting it to be like Last Jedi. And I think
it's a shame that's the attitude we have to have with the Star Wars franchise now.
I know, that's an abomination.
Are you going to change? Are you going to change your name out of protest?
No, because I want to believe that the only Star Wars movies that ever exist are the original trilogy.
Yeah, goddamn right. Forget the rest. It's kind of like Highlander and Highlander 2. You know, Highlander.
Well, the prequels were good.
That can be only 3.
Yeah, fuck the Highlander where they were aliens. That never happened. That alternate universe.
Highlander 2 is bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, that was what the fuck. Things just should have never happened. But anyways, I am going to wrap this up. It is getting late, so last remarks. Jenna, you're going to take off. So I'm going to let Dave give the last remarks. So Rad, you got anything you want to like promote or anything?
Anything I want to promote? I want to promote capitalism. Ain't it great?
Goddamn right.
Now buy my shit.
Go to his channel. Get him to another fucking 300,000 subs and shit like that. He hasn't broken 1 million yet, so fuck off.
Didn't Christopher Hitchens in his last words say capitalism downfall?
By the way, I'm not petty jealous or anything like that, Rags. Just don't think that I am, fucker.
That's fine. I'll hang out with you. I'll be your friend.
I'd love that. Thank you so much. He hangs out with the little people on YouTube.
I don't mind. Big, little. I got friends in high places and I got friends in here. So it's fine.
Yeah, there you go.
Ah, great.
How about Clockwork? You want anything to add?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
reason why
Steve was love.
Oh, had a great time with you guys tonight.
Steve, love is Steve.
Fucking
Steve's
liar.
All right, Dave, our fabulous producer who worked really hard on the last one and was going to lose his mind because of the VMix. He just left. That tells you what he got to add. Well, you know what? That's a perfect ending. Good night.